死，离苦得乐，速证无生。Will the Sangha come true out of compassion for the sake of this assembly and all living beings? Please turn the wonderful dharma wheel to teach us how to leave sufferings and attain bliss in birth and death. They realize numbers.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Enlightened one.
Namo saranto suchedoye holahudi sanmyo sanputoshi.
Namo sadanto suchedoye arahadi samyang samputoshi.
无上甚深微妙法，百
百
千
千
万
万
劫
劫
难
难
遭
遭
遇。
遇。
我今见闻得受持，愿皆如来真实义。I'll give you a line, you give it back. Supreme and wondrous Dharma.
Supreme and wondrous Dharma.
Subtle and profound.
Subtle and profound.
Rarely is encountered.
Rarely is encountered.
Even in a million eons.
Even in a million eons.
But now we see and hear it.
Now we see and hear it.
And accept it reverently.
Accept it reverently.
May we truly understand.
May we truly understand
the Buddha's actual meaning.
The Buddha's actual meanings.
Venerable Master, Dharma friends, welcome to our Sutra lecture tonight. This is June 24th, 2017. We're about to embark on tonight's Sutra lecture as we explore the 10 Grounds chapter of the Flower Garland Sutra. And before we do that, we're going to first invoke spiritual presence. We're going to invite the pantheon, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the Flower Garland Assembly, to draw near and invisibly bless every one of us here and those who are listening to this sutra lecture in the future, ideally on the internet or through audio, however you might find your way to this text. Let's hope that those blessings cover all like a cloud of sweet dew. So here it is on the cover of your text. If you have one of these, please look at the romanization of the Chinese words. That's to say the ABC spelling those Chinese characters. Of course, if you can read the characters, you're all set. We're going to be chanting Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing, and the meaning of that is in the English above. So that's what we're about. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing, Hua Yan Ai Hui Fo Pu Sa. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing, Hua Yan Ai Hui Fo Pu Sa. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing, Hua Yan Hai Hui Fo Pu Sa. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing, Hua Yan Hai Hui Fo Pu Sa. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing, Hua Yan Hai Hui Fo Pu Sa. Namo Da please open your text. We're on page 8 and 9. 第8、第9页。If anybody would like to have a Vietnamese translation, we've got a translation up in the balcony simultaneously. So we'll be doing a 2-language lecture tonight. I think tonight we actually have more warm breathing human bodies here in the Buddha Hall than we have online. That's a positive trend. That's a happy trend. We're pleased with that. The last couple weeks, months, we've had more virtual humans than we've had flesh and blood humans. So holding off the digital world one lecture at a time. But it's inevitable, isn't it? Okay, we're on. If you look at on page 8, where are we going to start? We're going to start with the lines that say, 大愿力所摄. 大愿力所摄. He's supported by great vows. We're going to be starting right there and doing that first paragraph. Okay, ready? Everybody happy? Here we go. 大愿力所摄. 如来力所加，自善力所持，常念如来力，无所谓，不共佛法，善清净，身心思觉。能成就福德智慧，大慈大悲，不舍众生，入无量智道。Okay, great. Now, what did we say? Let's find out. Look over to the right, page 9. And it's the second line where it starts with, he is supported by great vows. Okay, here we go. Ready? Let's read it together in unison. You got it? He is supported by great vows, aided by the Tathagata's strength, supported by the strength of his own goodness, and through constant mindfulness of the Tathagata's powers, fearlessnesses, and dharmas special to a Buddha. He has also skillfully purified deep thoughts and awareness. Because of great kindness and compassion, he does not abandon sentient beings, and he masters the way of limitless wisdom. We're talking about a bodhisattva, not limited to men, not specifically female either. Gender is not the issue in this sutra. Because why? The sutra goes deeper than the bodies that we bring to this life. Sutra's talking about the deepest programming of human nature. And if you're thinking computer programming, correct. As an image that we can recognize. What's a computer program? It's a series of zeros and ones, written collections of 8. It's called binary code. Every time you touch your computer, you are activating zeros and ones, zeros and ones, zeros and ones in clever combinations. Interactions, by the millions, billions every second. We see it as, oh, there's my email. but a lot of zeros and ones had to get activated before we get our email. Okay. Through clever coding, we get functions. Precisely what's going on in the sutra. But it's not talking about silicon-based beings. It's talking about hydrocarbon-based beings. Carbon, which is a natural element, and water, right? That's what makes us up. But what activates us are deep programmings in our nature, okay? In our human/Buddha nature. Before we activate them, it's human nature. After we activate them, it's Buddha nature. Same stuff. Same stuff. And the way the sutra describes it, nobody is excluded. The way the sutra describes it, not only no human is excluded, but no living being fails to come pre-coded. We arrive pre-coded. The potential is there for us to have everything in this paragraph. What's going on in the paragraph? It's talking about a bodhisattva who has done a really good job of activating all those potentials. But we've all got them. They're all there waiting to be booted up. That was I remember when that was a new word for people. Oh, did you boot into your, what would they say? Boot into the shell if you were a Linux type person, right? You didn't have Windows, you didn't have Mac, you had Linux. You boot into the shell and you can find the applications. Okay, well, gee whiz, same story with these devices. We've got it in our pocket. They say 70% of people the 21st century sleep within 3 feet of their cell phone, maybe even closer, maybe under your pillow, all day long. This has now become part of our lives. We just have it surgically implanted, a real palm top. So what's going on? Same thing, just micro. Same thing. When we look at our kookaburra on the cover of our phone, we're activating the potentials programmed in silicon, in the chip that's the heart of your phone. We've got the equivalent in our human/Buddha nature. The Buddha's activated it, booted it up. He's clicked on it, double-clicked, double-tapped on it. Humans have not yet. We haven't done it yet if we're still living beings, but it's there. So, by explaining it that way, what I want to do is bring this closer to us. On this page, it sounds like some, League of Superheroes. This must be a Marvel comic book talking about someone who is supported by great vows. Well, if we can understand it that way, then that's helpful. And as we mentioned last week, Marvel has brought us the first successful female superhero, Wonder Woman. Apparently Wonder Woman is a really good movie, they say. And it's about a superhero who's female. Works. It's great. But point is, this sutra is not a Marvel comic. It's got a longer lifespan than Marvel comics. Talking about superheroes, this has been in our human repository of wisdom for 2,600 years. And that's just as far as we remember. I think probably more accurately, it's been part of our heritage potential since our species or any species took breath. This sutra is not limited by our world, say it that way. So maybe this has just always been there because we've always had this potential to wake up. Okay, out of my league, right? I'm in deep water now. But what does it say? It says this bodhisattva we're continuing the paragraph that began last week. And we learned about this bodhisattva in the 7th ground, prior to the one we're lecturing on today, achieves the wisdom, blessings, and virtue because he's really been good at cultivating expedient wisdom. What we said about that was expedient wisdom comes about because the bodhisattva wants to teach. He's a teacher. She's a teacher. What is she teaching? She's teaching, you could say, people how not to drown in the ocean of suffering. Okay, good Buddhist language, right? You know the word samsara? It's before nirvana. Samsara is the continuity of birth and death, birth and death, birth and death. I was reading some apocalyptic fiction the other day, just comparing views of what happens when this planet comes to an end. And the villain, some arch-villain in the story, said, "Oh, you humans, the only thing you're good at doing is dying, because you do that without fail. Everything else is up for grabs, but death is not." And it was like, okay, there you go, the Buddhist sentiment. So the Bodhisattva says, yeah, I know that, so I want to teach them how to skillfully live so that when the time to die comes, you have some choices. You can talk back to the ghost of impermanence. Politely, but firmly, right? No, I don't want to go this time. I've been listening to the Avatamsaka Sutra lectures, and I understand that there's part of me that does not die, and I'm going through that door into something, into another program of my nature. Bodhisattva's vows. Okay, so something like that, right? And there we go. He is supported by great vows. And what are his vows? To teach. Okay? And he is aided by the Tathagata's strength. So at this point, we're going to find out in a few weeks, if everybody sticks with this lecture series, we're going to go deeper into the eighth ground where we are, and the Buddhas show up. This is not just special to the Bodhisattva, maybe once upon a time. In the eighth ground, the Buddhas come to this cultivator and make a specific request. It's very, very personal what happens when the Buddhas show up. They say, don't quit. Don't quit. Living beings are drowning tonight in the sea of birth and death. It hurts. Don't quit, they say. Well, we'll get there. Coming up. Remember what I said tonight when we get there. So the Tathagata's strength is invoked at that point so that the Bodhisattva continues and takes one more step when it seems like pointless. Seems like nothing to be gained by being patient and cultivating again today. That's what it seems like to the reality of the Bodhisattva at that point. That's part of the eighth ground. The Buddhas come and say, not yet, not yet. Keep going, keep going. And he does, and sure enough, it was just another state, another step along the road to Buddhahood. Okay, furthermore, this Bodhisattva is supported by the strength of his own goodness. I really like that. 自善力所持, upheld by. The verb is to held up, to hold on to. Power of his goodness, of her goodness. So, people who say to me, and I've heard this a lot, people say, good people finish last. In the world out there, in the marketplace, good people are suckers. If you hang on to kindness, people walk all over you. If you insist on helping others, you always come out behind. Isn't that right? They say, poking to see whether virtue and kindness and goodness and generosity aren't only for losers. Hoping that I'll say, well, you have to kind of stand up for yourself. You really ought to get in there and get ahead for old number one. And I don't. I don't say that. That would be a real sellout for me and for the sutra. Here's the sutra saying, at the 8th ground, this bodhisattva, what holds him up, what holds her up? All the goodness that he or she has done every step of the way. Invisibly, without fanfare, without applause, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, doing the good thing that's often hard and doesn't get applauded in the marketplace. And you wonder, you wonder, how come movies portray the winners being fastest, unvirtuous, cruelest, hardest, slimiest, creepiest? This is the time of the anti-hero, right? The anti-hero. I saw the turn when I was a teenager. My dad, what was my touch with reality? I was, 13. What did I know about the world? Mostly what I knew about the world were the books that I pilfered from my dad's reading table while he went to work. I had this thing that I was, whatever my dad knew, I wanted to know. And he was a reader. My dad would come home and read at night to go to sleep because he was a lawyer during the day and just argued. And so he would decompress by reading fiction. So I would read, and there were cowboy stories, mostly Louis L'Amour. Do people know Louis L'Amour westerns? Taggart and Hondo, remember those? And Rio Bravo, I think, might have been Louis L'Amour. Anyway, great story. And it was an old-fashioned hero, good guys, white hats, right? We're a good guy. I'm a good guy. But then there was a shift, and Ian Fleming came around. Ian Fleming was James Bond, and my dad read every one as they were published. They were new and fresh back then. And of course, I was just one page behind my dad. And sure enough, who's James Bond? Kiss, kiss, bang, bang. And he was a good guy. Well, yeah, but he killed the bad guys, and it was sometimes hard to tell who was who. And he broke every precept along the way. The cowboys in Louis L'Amour's westerns were still virtuous people. They were loners, they were drifters, but they stood up for principle. And the good guys won because they were good. James Bond, Ian Fleming's James Bond world, the good guys won because they were bad, badder than the bad guys. And from then on, it was a slide downhill. Those are intensely popular. Secret agents, secret agent man, given you a number and taken away your name. And boy, oh boy, from then on, it was the time. It was post-war. And I think maybe those books emerged because, or that kind of hero, the anti-hero, emerged because why? The horror of the Second World War, I think. If you had to say, and the Second World War was 40 years after the First World War. First World War was the war to end all wars. And there were events like the Battle of the Somme and Verdun and Belleau Woods where an entire generation of French men died in the morning before noon, right? 10,000 soldiers, men, died. A generation of French men, vital French men, died. They say I don't know if you all studied French military history. I'm sure you did at some point, right? No, not. French military history is marked by always being one generation behind the Germans in weapons, right? The Germans have machine guns. The French come out on horseback, right, with muzzle loaders and gallant, and they're pour la patrie, and they're mowed down. And in the Second World War, the French come out with machine guns and the Germans come out with tanks, and wipe them dead. So they said in a morning, in the Battle of the Somme, Belleau Wood, the French just, There's 5,000 bodies in the battlefield. So that kind of horror, and then it was escalated in World War II, turned people sour. And a lot of faith in humanity was destroyed. How could people do what we did in World War I and World War II? And the men, I don't know any soldiers or sailors or aviators in my father's generation who came home and said, let me tell you what happened in Guadalcanal. Let me tell you what happened over Ploiesti. I want to tell you all about D-Day. They didn't. What happened? They came back and we say, what happened in the war, Dad? And this look. And then shut it off. Let's watch TV. Nobody wanted to talk about it, My goodness. It was too horrible. And I think something like that was what molded post-war fiction and created the anti-hero who couldn't find his way back. If you had to say what was it about those anti-heroes, it was home was lost. What was familiar and safe was no longer familiar and safe. That is to say what? Human nature. Because they looked face onto what human nature was capable of doing, putting other human beings into ovens after extracting their fillings and their eyeglasses and their wristwatches, and burning them. Having other human beings send other human beings up a smokestack by the millions. When we see that, you go, no. My own uncle, Uncle John, was among the very first troops to enter concentration camps in Poland. And he never talked about it until just before he died, which was only 8 years ago. And Uncle John, someone from Europe came to interview him because he was among General Eisenhower's Signal Corps, what's became Army Intelligence, and it was known that he had been among the first. I don't know whether it was Dachau or Treblinka or Auschwitz, but Uncle John was among the first American Allied troops to enter the concentration camps and encounter the living ghosts who survived and all the ashes who didn't, And when he finally was, invited to talk about it, he broke into tears. And my Uncle John was a big, tough, strong guy, military man. And he had no words. He had only feelings that he had bottled up because you can't express that kind of horror. So when you see that, what happens? I think it gives you serious doubts that going home is safe inside. So what do? You create a hero who is good but broken. And the anti-heroes who I saw growing up were broken men, right? And we got Shaft. Remember Richard Roundtree, African-American spy man? What was it? No one understands him but his baby. No one understands him but his baby. That's Shaft. He's a mean mother Fletcher, they said. That was Shaft's, And, what is Shaft's broken guy? There's only one person who understands him, and that's a woman who touches his feminine side. But what does Shaft do? He's real good at sliding down a rope into the hotel window of the bad guy and shooting him dead. So, okay. And then who else have we got? We've got In Like Flint. James Coburn, remember the Flint movies, A Certain Generation? Flint was an anti-hero. He was just like he was the American James Bond attempt to create that kind of person whose his claim to fame is that he breaks all the rules, right? In like Flint. So there we are. And that road, now this is the idea, is what's being described in the sutra tonight is a road to programs, to, what do we want to call them? Do we want to call them, are these, what's the word I'm looking for? Are these algorithms? Coding statements, sentences, paragraphs, pages of code that provide access to these powers? Yeah, I think so. And I am the son of a war hero, son of someone who went through 51 bombing missions over Europe and North Africa and survived, but couldn't go there. My dad had a box full of medals. He had the Purple Heart from getting wounded on his 51st mission. He had the Distinguished Service Cross with oak leaf clusters and the Distinguished Flying Cross. My father was in a B-24 as the bombardier, and he was crunched down. I've seen pictures of what it was like to crawl into this flying contraption of wood and fabric, right? B-24s were made of wood and cloth, so they could be light, and go up in the air. And they met anti-aircraft flak when they were bombing Romania, where the oil was, where Hitler had his oil wells, and it was that wasn't suicide, but close to a suicide mission over Ploiesti, and there were 2 different raids. I'm wild incorrect, so this is all a matter of record, but more than half of the planes who went didn't come back. Each plane had 10, a crew of 10, and in this particular trip, my father's pilot was killed, his co-pilot was killed, and it was up to him, as the plane was going down, to crawl up out of the bomb bay, the bombardier's cab, little cave down there, take charge of the plane and lead his squadron back safely, involving going under a bridge, flying a B-24, out of whatever 15,000 feet, and go through the supports of a bridge underneath, and then safely back home to land in wherever they were, in Italy, or was it back in England, and got the Distinguished Flying Cross for that, and you can't, meanwhile somebody's trying to knock you out of the air, what do you think when you're in a plane and there's a little bit of turbulence? My stomach goes clutch, but I know nobody's shooting at me when I'm in that plane, much less do I have to walk up to the cockpit and, So you think, oh my goodness, the price you pay for doing things like that is shutting off access to belief that there is a road home to safety inside. So the greatest generation, created anti-heroes who were angry, who were mistrustful, who you couldn't get close to. James Bond had a lot of friends? No. He didn't trust other men. What did he do? See them, shoot them. Women, you aggress sexually, right? And oh my goodness. Goodness, virtue, kindness, not part of the equation. All right, so I am the son of the greatest generation, and I look at popular culture and think, where are the heroes? Where are the models? Where is somebody who is portrayed on the screen, largely because we are the movie generation, or on TV on the small screen that points me back and says, it is safe to go inside. When you go inside, you will find great vows. You'll find the Buddha's strength waiting for you. You will find your own accumulated small acts of goodness that will take you back to wisdom and compassion. And through constant mindfulness of the Buddha's 10 powers, 4 fearlessnesses, and 8 dharmas special to a Buddha, they're all waiting for you inside. Go there, they're yours, collect them, you'll be happy. Right? I don't see that. I don't think that's available in popular culture. And here we are on a Saturday night, sitting on the floor of a church, many of us with our legs crossed and our eyes closed, going, let's open a 2,600-year-old book and see what we can learn. You know, what do you do that for? It's a different model of humanity, an older one, which survived every war that humans could devise and didn't lose sight of the goodness inside. So I say to my friends who ask me and say, don't kind people always finish last? Aren't good people actually losers? Say, depends on the story you're listening to. If your story is entirely a marketplace story where everything is bought and sold, then maybe so. But you've been fed, we have been fed a steady diet of anti-heroes, maybe coming from the experiences of the 20th century, which was the bloodiest century in human history in terms of who died, how many people died. And I'm looking, why am I pulled back and back and back and back to this text? Because it's another story. It's an older story. It's a broader view of our potential. And what's missing from the sutra? Number one, emphasis on gender is missing. These bodhisattvas doesn't give us male or female. It goes deeper than this body, right? What else doesn't it give us? It doesn't give us money as a value. Accumulating wealth is not part of the description of the bodhisattva. Not. What else? Social status is completely not part of the sutra. There's no caste here. In America, when we hear accents, by and large, it doesn't trigger in us knowledge of our social status. That is not true in England. Right? Now, you won't know if I'm right? But, now, I'm not British, but from what I read and from my friends who are, they talk about accent as being key to determining your education, and your education can only happen if you have either outstanding intellect or enough money to get you to Oxford and Cambridge. But it doesn't start. That's the last step. If you've got the requisite status, it starts in elementary school, private school, which public school it's inverted in England, public and private. But your accent places you into a status that you don't escape much throughout your entire life. If you speak with a Cockney accent, which we know why, because of My Fair Lady, right? Broadway musicals. If you speak with a Cockney accent, people pretty much can predict your salary and your education. They know. It's right, governor. Right. I'll buy a flower off a poor girl, says Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady. Hey, governor, buy a flower. Right? She's, you know what neighborhood in London she's from. Okay, well, in America we don't do that pretty much. If I talk like this, y'all want to know what I talk about. You don't care if I come from Texas, right? Ain't that the truth? And if, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country, said John F. Kennedy. I don't do Boston very well. That's an attempt to be Boston, right? Sorry. Right. Yeah. And we don't, there's, in America, accent is not a factor in determining your earning capacity. But in Great Britain, for example, where a caste system is very much in place, it's not overt like in India, but everyone's speaking English, more or less, but it's not the same. If you speak with a Scottish burr, if you speak with an Irish brogue, people know a lot about you in terms of what you're capable of doing. This sutra does not do that. It's not there, not part of the Buddha's vision of human/Buddha nature, our potential. Human/Buddha nature, our potential, goes deeper than caste, education, financial wealth, gender. Interestingly, age is not part of this either. We don't hear about children or elders. Isn't that interesting? What do we hear about? We hear about living beings, bodhisattvas, and Buddhas. The Buddhas are present in the sutra. They pop up, and they're post-living beings. Living beings are the body of this text. Who are living beings? Future Buddhas. People who have not yet booted up, there's our verb, these programs that we find described in this paragraph. That's what the sutra is about. And in between, the success stories, which are the Buddhas, and the living beings, which are the tofu and broccoli, you could say, of the sutra, the meat and potatoes, in between are the bodhisattvas, who are running back and forth from Buddhahood to living beings and back and forth to teach. That's what it's about. And yet, at the same time, it's a living document. So, how interesting, right? That we, in order to make sense of this sutra, we have to come face to face with these archetypes of success stories, people who have entirely revealed the programs on their hard drive of their nature, those who are confused, who don't know where to look to find those programs, and the bodhisattvas who know how, who have the know-how and have the vows. They don't quit. They keep coming back to wake us up, saying, oh, put your hands on these controllers, click the mouse here. Wow, look at that. Isn't that amazing? Now go tell somebody else. Right? Okay. So, next, what is it? Constant mindfulness. There's our key word. Constant mindfulness of three things: the Tathagata's powers, fearlessnesses, and dharma special to a Buddha. Okay, last week, you remember halfway through the lecture, I pointed back at our bookcase back there and said, there is a book back there created by a hardworking monastic who went into the Tripitaka, went into the Buddhist canon, and took note of all the lists, all 84,000 Dharma doors. I pulled it out for us tonight. Sanzang Fa Shu, it's called. The numbers of dharmas in the three baskets. So all the lists in the Tripitaka. Now, this is by Yiru Fa Shi, the Ming Dynasty. It's a Ming Dynasty work. When there were Tripitakas available, there were canons, of which we have one here, we have two over here, second one. And this monk went through and got all the ones, and all the twos, and all the threes, and all the fours, and all the fives, all the way up to, let's see, there are 11s, there are 10s, 18s, How many others? 80s. We're into the 80s now. Lists 80s of these things. So, okay. What is it? It's that how the Buddha taught us to cultivate came in multiples. Rarely was there one, right? Mostly it was more than one. And you think about it, what have we got? We have the fourfold, the 四圣谛, right? The fourfold, the four truths, the four paths, the Noble Eightfold Path, the 12 links, the 6 paramitas, etc. Multiples. Okay, something as simple as Namo Omi Tofo. Okay, what could be simpler than one Buddha's name? Well, there are multiple ways to recite the Buddha's name. And every time Master Hua would give it to us, he would say, okay, there is the Guanxiang Nianfo, there is the Guanxiang Nianfo, there is the Jingang Nianfo, and there's the Shisheng Nianfo. There are 4 different ways to recite the Buddha's name, just like that. Okay, so the Buddha Dharma, as it comes in the Chinese Mahayana tradition, comes in multiples. What do we have when we meditate? What is dhyana? What is chan? Well, there's 2 different kinds of chan. There's calming, zhi, and there's contemplating, guan, right? There's shamatha and vipassana. Oh my goodness. So it always comes in multiples. There is a scholar who says that what became known as the Buddha Dharma was first just lists of practice. So if you're a yogi, what's the simplest? Well, maybe the first thing that you might learn as a yoga practitioner might be salute to the sun, right? Surya Namaskar. How many people do the salute to the sun? One hand went up, and one little hand. You can raise it up, raise your hand. Over here, guys, yoga, salute to the sun, Surya Namaskar. Nobody? I'm surprised. I thought you were all yogis. We need to practice. Fabrizio, let's get Fab down here to teach yoga. All right. So, salute to the sun is a fundamental asana, a yoga posture. But what is it? It's a series of movements. You have to bend forward, then you bend back, and you put your right foot out, you put your left foot out, you lean back, you slide, Salute to the sun, Surya Namaskar. Then we learn downwards facing dog, and then we learn the eagle pose, and we learn all these different asanas. All of the Buddha Dharma proceeded from lists like that, according to some scholars. They're called maturka, mother lists. And how did they progress? Well, what does Master Hua said? 84,000 Dharma doors. Bawan Sichen Faman. That's a lot. 84,000. Okay? 4 Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, they all proceeded from what the Buddha learned as he did his yoga under the trees on the riverbank, wandering around for 6 years. Okay? Finally, he sat down and mastered the 4 dhyanas. 4, like that. Lots and lots. Okay? So many that one Ming Dynasty monk made a book about them. Look at that book. That's how many lists there are. 84,000 Dharma methods are included in our book. Okay. This is for any Buddhist scholar starting out wanting to master those lists. Let me recommend to you, well, I shouldn't recommend this. I should recommend Buddhism A to Z. Buddhism A to Z is the best one. Do we have a copy? Jin Hosher, you're in the back. Could I ask you to get a copy of Buddhism A to Z and bring it up? Okay. This, before Buddhism A to Z existed, the author of Buddhism A to Z, Ron, Professor Epstein, had this, as did I. This is Suthil's, what's it called? Dictionary of Chinese Buddhist Terms. What's Hodous and Suthil, William Suthil, Louis Hodous, back in, they don't have the original date, but I believe it was the 19, it might have been the 1800s. Here is a preface. Let's see if I've got, I could have done this homework before I opened it, couldn't I? 1937. Okay. Professor Hodos, 1934 and 1937. Great, awesome, thank you. Buddhism A to Z is a contemporary version of the lists. All right? And this is Professor Epstein, published by Buddhist Text Translation Society, Dharma Realm Buddhist University. It's available. Those of you online who are seeing this maybe for the first time, Buddhism A to Z, it's lists. Okay, what are you showing me there? Uh-huh. Okay, copies of donation box. So, I get mine free as I leave home. So this is a list of lists, and the thing that's unique about this is Professor Epstein uses Master Hua's explanations, taken from all of Shifu's lectures. I think similar to Yi Rufa Shi from the Ming Dynasty. In this text, Buddhism A to Z, it's lists of lists, the 5 skandhas. What about the 5 skandhas? Form, feeling, cognition, formations, consciousness, with Master Hua's commentary from various sutra lectures over 30 years. That's what's unique. Ron limits his definitions. He doesn't go to Sutil and Hodos. He goes to Shifu's Dharma talks, Shifu's sutra lectures to get his combination. So what I wanted to show you was, back when we were just beginning, this was the only thing in English. Sutil, English definitions. So when I came to tonight, when I came to 常念如来力无所谓不共佛法, I grabbed my Sutil. This is known as the Sutil, S-O-O-T-H-I, Professor Sutil, 1934. They came with no index, right? Finally, one edition had an index printed. This was Harvard University, reprinted this at one point. We had to buy it. Now it's public domain. You can get a copy online. There's all kinds of different... This is the index, which I Xeroxed out and then sliced it into so I could use it. Before that, you simply had to count the strokes. How many strokes, if you wanted to look up the Buddha's 18 special Buddha Dharmas, how would you do it? 十八不共法. What is 十? 2 strokes. Go to 2. Oh, there's a bunch of 2-stroke characters. There's lots and lots, page through, like this. Pretty primitive, you just had brute. You just turn the pages, no index. Okay, later on, somebody finally added, this one doesn't have an index. It's got a Sanskrit index. Oh, that's helpful. What page do you find Madhyamika? What page do you find Mahabijna Bibu? That's on page 316. Oh, good. Speak Sanskrit. Okay, so this was what you did when you got the numbers, when you got the lists. And according to some scholars, it was all lists originally from the Buddha. And then the disciples mastered this practice and that practice and this practice. Passed on down and it got amplified to when the Buddha explained the Lotus Sutra. He stitched them together to talk about how to cultivate, to tell the stories, right? So, here's what I wanted to share with everybody. What are the Tathagata's powers? Given everything that I've been talking about having access to the basic coding, the carbon-based algorithms in our nature that if we know to look inside and we haven't been ruined by a war experience, something horrific that says, don't go there, not safe. right? We've seen that people can put other people in ovens, so by the millions, so we're not going to go there. If our generation and your generation, younger people, maybe we didn't have that experience, maybe we trust that we can go there and find good stuff. It's that basic, right? What do we find? Well, the Bodhisattva says, yes, I want living beings to wake up because they're suffering a lot. How do I know what to teach? How do I know how to teach them? Well, what if he was constantly mindful of the Tathagata's 10 powers? What would they be? Oh, now that would be helpful. I got them. The Tathagata's 10 powers, and I haven't got them memorized in order. I more or less have them memorized, but I want to give them to you in order. All right. The first is the knowledge of what is and what is not the case. How does it go? 处非处智力. The strength of wisdom of knowing what is the case and what is not the case. In other words, this bodhisattva has cultivated to the place where, looking inside, he has got a filter, he's got a database. We have these terms accessible to us, right? He's got a connection so that he knows without doubt truth from falsehood. What is the case and what is not the case. No confusion. All right, that's one. From that, he is able to teach. People don't confuse him. He knows that the ability to kill other people and put them in an oven isn't the deepest level. It's not fundamental. It's a perversion of human nature. So he's not scared. He still knows how to get home. All right, number two, he knows all the differences of karma and retribution of each living being. Right? How about that? So, you want to take across your uncle, your beer-drinking, pickup-driving uncle. What you going to do? How are you going to teach him? How are you going to talk to him in a way that he wants to find his way home? It's not in kicking butt. It's not in drunken weekends. It's in listening to yourself and thinking it over. How do you teach him? You know what's due him, his karmic retribution, both good and bad. One look and you know. Then you got a chance, right? You got a chance to teach him. You won't waste any time. Number three, you know in yourself about samadhis, about the dhyana, about the samadhis, and about the liberations. In other words, you're a master meditator. You know about first, second, and third, and fourth dhyana. You know about all the different samadhis, right, that you can enter and come out of. And you know about the 8 jetoa, the 8 liberations, and other kinds of meditation states. That's Tathagata's powers, wisdom powers. And it's just, for you, you got them, right? You can go into them, you can come out of them. How nice if you need that kind of strength to be patient to teach. And of course you will, you do. Okay, there are 3, the next 3 are all about living beings' differences in what? In their potentials. The word in Chinese is gun, which means roots, faculties. You know what this person is capable of. This one is really good with their ears, so you use language. This one is really good with their eyes, so you use gesture, color, movement. Martial arts. If you use martial arts on somebody who's good with words, it's not very effective. You use puns on somebody who's a martial artist, they're not moved, right? So that's gun butong, the various different kinds of faculties. The next one is you know with one look what this person's jie, their ability to understand. So everything you say to them goes right to the heart. This person is really sentimental. They like romance. So you use lots of puppies, right? Lots of puppies in your stories. They're really touched by puppies. The other one over there, that person is really mechanical. So you use lots of logic. You use connections from the realm of physics or nature, and they get it. Not puppies, right? Each one has a different road home. The next one is zhongzhong jie. You know their realms of each living being, which means what? How long ago were they a deva? And then they lost their blessings and came back to the human realm. How long ago was this person among the animals? Do they still bring a lot of animal behaviors, right? You know and you teach according to that. Okay, I like this one. I mentioned it last week. This is number 7. You know where all paths lead. So as soon as the person you want to teach takes the first step, you know where their karma is going to carry them, and you can work with them. How about that? Suppose that was your mom, and you knew that she was just going to repeat the same old pattern unless you find a way to move them to a new road. How about that? Okay. Then 2 of them are from the 5, the liu tong, the liu shan tong, 6 kind of the 6 psychic powers. We talk about the wu yan liu tong, the 5 eyes and the 6 powers, right? The next 2, number 8 and number 9, are crossover with the 6 psychic powers. One of them is past lives. Take one look, you know where your daughter was in a past life. So you're able to use your special access to her mind, being her dad or her mom, to teach her. Because she's been in many, 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 many past lives, she was in the army and has that ability to respond to commands and precision and order that the army requires, right? So you're not sloppy with her. You could give her commands and she'll respond, right? The next one is tianyan zhi li, without obstruction, the Deva vision. One of the Buddha's, the Tathagata's powers is the ability to see out of the human realm into the heavens now, and into the hells, and into all these different places where beings live, because you can see it. You know how to teach, because you have context for all of humanity's stupidity and our brilliance. You can put it in context automatically because you got it, right? You don't have to ask, you know. Wouldn't that be great if you really wanted to teach as a bodhisattva? And last, the final one is you have the wisdom power that knows how to end habits. Lo jin, shi qi lo jin, truly. Right? You see the power of habits to recreate the world. Right? I remember asking Shifu, why do beings suffer? And he said, principle fights with desire. Habits tell the story. We're in that realm where principle is always principle, never going to go away. Desire arises in the mind. How we live there, the stories of our lives, is told in our habits. If we can change habitual behavior, being inspired by a teacher, if we're pulled back by our friends or our own doubts, that's habit. Principle fights with desire. Habits will tell the story. right? So when we cultivate, what do? We train new habit patterns. What does it mean? You repeat and repeat and repeat until new neural pathways are created. How many times does it take? What Malcolm Gladwell says, you have to do it 10,000 times before it's really yours, right? Habits tell the story. So that's why we do what? Find good friends to cultivate with, so that those habits get a boost. And we make new, what? Algorithms. What is an algorithm? Why does it, if I tap on this 10 times, same thing is going to happen, because the road, the pathway, is determined by copper, right? Whatever the wiring is on the piece of silicon. So if instead we say, yeah, I want to be able to meditate and enter samadhi, well, do it. Do it and do it and do it until that algorithm is forged. And then desire arises and you go, no thanks. I know where that leads. I'm sitting. Right? So that's the last one. Cutting off all habit. Those are the 10. What is and what is not the case. Karma and its ripening retribution. Dhyana samadhis and liberations, meditation. Difference in potentials, difference in understandings, difference in realms. You know where all paths lead from the first step? Past lives, the deva I, and cutting off habits. You command those 10 power tools the way all Buddhas have, and you can teach. You're good at it. So, what does it say? He is supported, has constant mindfulness of the Tathagata's powers. Okay, what did I just give you? Gave you a list. There's a list, right? In the Buddhism A to Z, right in the Dharma lists from the Tripitaka, from the Ming Dynasty. The 10 wisdom powers are here, and it'll tell you where they're found, which sutra they come from. And good old Soothill, the English language Buddhist dictionary, first one from 1934, bless his heart. Soothill and Hodos. Here it is. But you need to know his definitions, not always accurate. Got to really be careful. The Chinese is correct. His English versions of them, I'll read you what we got. Hope I didn't lose my bookmark here. I'll read you his, what I just read you according to Soothill. Okay, the Dashabala, the 10 powers. The 10 powers of a Buddha, giving complete knowledge of what is right or wrong in every condition. Not bad. What is the karma of every being, past, present, and future? Correct? All stages of dhyana, liberation, and samadhi. Good. The powers and faculties of all beings. So far, so good. The desires or moral direction of every being. Moral direction. It's murky, not clear. 6, the actual condition of every individual. That's helpful. 7, the direction and consequence of all laws. Nope, don't understand that. All causes of mortality and of good and evil in their reality. That's gibberish. The causes of mortality and of good and evil in their reality? That's really different from the Chinese. The end of all beings and nirvana. And the destruction of all illusion of every kind for habits. Nope. So, mixed, right? And, it's a real start. It'll point you in the right direction, but you can't stop with Soothill. That was, actually Professor Epstein was back when I was just a grad student, and he was ahead of me. I was in the MA program, he was in the doctoral program. I was very proud of my ability to use Soothill, and Ron, remember, said, oh no. No. You say, no, you can't, you can pretty much 50% trust Soothill. And like we just saw, 50% is in the right direction, check another source. So, okay. What about the fearlessnesses? What about the 18 dharmas special to a Buddha? There will be a quiz tonight after the... No, there won't be. You got 15 out of 18. Sorry, that's only 75%, right? 80%. So what are they? Lists. Lists, right? What are the 4 fearlessnesses? That's a Chinglish translation. 四种无畏, right? You could say the 4 aspects of courage, probably better, instead of a fearlessness. 无畏, that's Chinese. So what are they? They're interesting, but I'm not going to give them to you tonight. They have to do with speaking dharma, and it's deep psychology. Let me read them. The fearlessness of omniscience. The courage of omniscience. 一切智无畏, 无所谓, right? What is that? The fearlessness, the courage of ending outflows. Why would ending outflows cause you to be afraid? Oh. What else? The fearlessness of speaking about the path of obstacles. What's that all about? Right? Just to tell you, won't go into them. Takes too long. The fearlessness of speaking about the path that ends suffering. Are you telling me that we're afraid that suffering might end? Yes. And when someone speaks about it, we don't want to hear it? Correct. It's a very sober perspective on how we cling to our ignorance. Right? Why is it, what does speaking about the end of suffering have to do with fear? The answer is, we don't want to die. Ignorance doesn't want to die. Right? Very profound vision of how upside down we are. Because the Bodhisattva is constantly mindful of fearlessness, so he can talk about the ending of obstacles without being afraid. He can look at right in the face, what's so scary? Emptiness is scary. Emptiness is scary. The void. Nothing, I don't really exist the way I think I do. Terrifying. If it was not true, we would have Buddhas on every TV channel, right? We'd have lots of movies about Buddhas. We'd have Buddhas on every radio station. We don't. Because death, nothing, is too much to face. And so what do? We cling to other stories. Okay? So, interesting. Why do we love India? We talk about the mystic Orient. One reason is if you go to India, we haven't covered up impermanence in India. In Benares, the banks of the Ganges, let's bring that corpse down there and burn it and take those ashes and dump them in the river. Boy, whew. I remember in 1983, my first trip to India, and walking towards the Ganges with a wonderful Indian Buddhist monk leading us along the way, Asaji Bhante. And he said, be prepared, because about 8 blocks from the river, we cross into another zone, which is the ghost zone. And he said, it's very different here. Do not allow anybody to lead you down any road but the one we are walking on. He said, listen to my words and heed me, So we're walking along, 5 monks from America, and sure enough, I was in front, and from out of a side road came these 2 guys, kind of nondescript, hard to describe, couldn't remember them, and they said, come this way, right this way, please, come now. And Asaji was going fast in front, and luckily he turned around and he said, stop! And these guys looked at him and ran away. right? And I was walking down the road following. He says, "Those are ghosts. Do not follow them." You know. He said, "Come." So we went further and further, and there was a zone with loudspeakers, and over the loudspeakers was someone chanting, and it was I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Yeah, I believe it was Sanskrit, and it was some Vedic hymn meant to create blessings, but it was the kind of the sound that you would imagine outside the gates of hell, It was a tone that just made your hair stand up, and it sounded like eternal grief, unfiltered grief coming over the loudspeaker. And it was the neighborhood. And these were people who were buying coffins and selling coffins and, buying blessings and selling. They were going about their business, but we were in the ghost zone heading for the Ganges. And Asaji took us further, and we went down the steps, down these ancient stone steps. And you see these people with their shawls covering their heads, weeping, but beyond weeping, and families gathering, and you see all these wilted flowers that were sprinkled, and you see these sadhus, these men who have their bindis, and their job is to dispose of the corpses, to do the burning and to do the funeral rites. These are the undertakers for the people who want to come and send off their relatives or their friends in the sacred Mother Ganga, Ganges River. It's been going on that way since the Buddha's time, and maybe thousands of years before the Buddha. The Ganges River receives the ashes of the dead. And it's all there in front of you. Nothing is hidden. There it is. You're watching this body turn to ash in front of you from the flames, right? And here are the what? Here are the vultures, right? Coming down, waiting for an opportunity. And is this a human being, or is it someone in transition in a human body? Oh my goodness. And for a Methodist kid from Toledo, there was a lot of reality, especially because in this country we don't do it this way. We hide it in a sanitary ambulance, and it goes in the back door into the morgue, and the funeral home is all done behind the curtain. You can ask to watch the cremation, and but mostly we don't. And it's different ways of looking at what's really going on, and how much truth can we take. Was I afraid in Benares walking towards the Ganges? You bet. I had nothing to compare with what was going on. And I can remember that sound coming over the loudspeakers. It was a voice droning in a dirge. It was a funeral dirge. And it was 24 hours. I can't imitate it, but quite a way to say, this is just as important. The new moon, which is dark, is absolutely as important to life as the full moon, which is bright, and every phase of the moon in between. To think that somehow any one of us is not going to, leave our bodies and get a new one, that's naive. We're in the habit of not looking there, right? If you have how many of us, when we look at this beautiful flower, look at the stem? We don't. We like the beautiful yellow blossom, but you don't get the blossom without the stem and the leaves and the roots. So, anyway, the Tathagata's fearlessnesses say you can talk about the path of obstacles fearlessly. You can talk about the path that ends suffering fearlessly. We mostly cling to small comforts. If you, for example, how do you drink your coffee? If you are a 2 packet of sugar coffee person, drink a cup of black coffee. You go, ah. If you're a black coffee drinker, pour some sugar in it. And you go, ooh, it's so sweet. We like it the way we like it. And change it a little bit, and we go, don't like it. We're accustomed to our bodies being a certain way, and our thoughts, our language, our perspectives. We argue about whether or not we should take care of our parents' health crises. Can you imagine? That's a major debate in America right now, as if we're not going to get old and sick. Can you imagine that something like that you would assume would be a given, that when our relatives get sick, we care for them. When I get sick, I hope somebody cares for me, right? We argue about that. People are funny. Things that you would assume are givens are matters of division. We will split from each other over things like that. We buy and pay for weapons to destroy the world. America seems to be on a course where we must wage war. America is a warlike nation. We are engaged in hot wars on many continents. And yet we portray ourselves as the fortress of goodness and right. Funny, huh? Isn't that funny? And we do that given, it's accepted. Feeding ourselves, feeding our fellow citizens, we don't do that very well. But we will certainly bomb other nations. Currently, there are bombing ranges tonight that our tax dollars paid for. So, funny, huh? And yet, that's not the story we tell ourselves. We tell ourselves a very different story. How strange people are. Fearlessnesses? Can we speak of those truths fearlessly? Nope, we don't mostly. We want to hear about this celebrity gave birth to twins, and this celebrity's new CD is going to drop in a week. That's the language we use, and we're, whose film is going to make it to the Academy Awards. So, funny. People are funny that way. So the fearlessnesses come about, That's not a calf who was taken from her mother the day after she was born so that the mother cow sobbed inconsolably for hours as the calf was taken away. That's veal. Don't have to look further than that, right? We don't talk about those things. We have a different story. The Bodhisattva is here listening to the Tathagata's ability to speak the truth fearlessly and look at it as it is. Okay, I get it. How funny. Our stories break down right there. And here's the Bodhisattva can tell the truth fearlessly. So that's the 4 courages, the 4 fearlessnesses, if you like the Chinglish translation. Then there are 18 dharmas special to a Buddha, and we're going to let those rest for now. We'll pick them up next week. But there we go. This is the job of the person who runs back and forth between the meat and potatoes of the sutra, which is the story of living beings, and that realm at the top of Buddhas who have already walked it to its end. And all those programs are available to the Buddha. Bodhisattva is the communicator, running back and forth, learning all these tools of how to get us to wake up. Okay, interesting, huh? How this text comes alive. It's not just some old book. There are stories here that make us noble when we can hear them the way they're taught. Yeah, question? How does the Bodhisattva help me to cultivate more diligently? By making me ashamed of myself. when I hear stories in the sutras about what's possible and I look at my own behavior, I go, I can't face myself. I got to clean up my act. If I fall too far short of what is possible, I get ashamed of myself.
And another question is, how many types of ghosts are there in Buddhist canon?
How many types of ghosts are there in the Buddhist sense? In the Buddhist canon? I couldn't give you an actual number, but I've heard Master Hua say that there are absolutely as many ghosts as there are kinds of living beings. And then he would say, what do you think you are after you die? You know, and you go, well, I don't know, sure, I haven't thought about it. You know. He said, well, there's a period between leaving your body and going to the next one, and what are you then? Well, I hope I'm not a ghost, Shervo. Well, you think you're a spirit? I never think about it, Shervo. He said, why not? How old are you? Well, I'm 50, Shervo. 50 years ago, you knew? You know. He's trying to get us to look at it fearlessly, right? So, the exact number of ghosts, I don't know. How many kinds of ghosts there are? In the Shurangama Sutra, they talk a lot about ghosts. The Earth-Store Bodhisattva Sutra, there's a ghost who's a bodhisattva, right? Fearless, the ghost, poisonless. If you read the Earth-Store Bodhisattva Sutra, there's a ghost named No Poison, free of poison, non-toxic bodhisattva, who's a ghost king, right? And non-toxic comes and speaks the dharma. So I guess the answer is, it depends when you're looking, because the ghost realm is absolutely part of the turning wheel of rebirth. And we are currently embodied, and yet this body is going to go away, and before I get the next one, I will be disembodied and in what could be called a ghost realm. So, complex question, and if I were going to whack the person who asked the way Master Hua would whack the person who asked, he would say, just don't do ghost-like things and you don't have to know the answer. If you want to be a human, do human things. What do ghosts do? They're mostly angry. Mostly angry, and ghosts fight a lot, struggle for contention. And there's also hungry ghosts who are intensely greedy. And their bellies are as big as a bass drum and their throats are as tiny as a needle, and so they can never fill. That's hungry ghosts, preta. So, big question. Mostly we think it's weird and creepy, so we don't, talk about ghosts much. But it's a deep topic. And if anybody ever wanted to write a convincing doctoral dissertation, that would be a scary and uncomfortable topic, but you could definitely get your doctor, you get a doctor ghost expert, right? The ghost guru, ghost wala. Yeah. Okay, transfer the merit. We talk about the precepts for the deceased, that ceremony that happens occasionally. Precepts for the deceased particularly focuses on what are called gu huan, lonely souls. In China, in Sichuan, at night there was an earthquake. 150 people gone. Those are potentially gu huan, people who just are without warning taken through an accident like that. Of course, if a jetliner goes down, in those survivors, there can be 300, just like that. So this process of coming into a body and living the brief time, how many breaths, you could probably count them, how many breaths per lifetime? How many breaths in a minute, how many breaths in an hour, how many breaths in a day, count the days. In that brief time, and then we transit again. That's called samsara. It's called the ocean of suffering. And this is the story of those people who say, yeah, but there's more, don't forget, cultivate, and you can get your head above the water and actually leave the sea of suffering. Let's all wake up together, you know. That's what this book is telling us. So. Okay, time to transfer the merit. Here we go. More, is that it, Jerry? That's those two questions? One more. Go ahead. Let's hear it.
Do God's ghosts and spirits come to listen to you when you chant the mantras and call to Buddha?
Do God's ghosts and spirits come and listen to me as I chant the mantra and what? And bow to the Buddha. I've heard things like that. I can't verify it with my own eyes, but I've heard that Master Hua would say to us before, if we were late for evening chanting, I'll never forget it. We used, at Gold Mountain, occasionally we would just get lazy and get too involved in a discussion, and instead of getting to the altar at 6:30 on the dot and lighting the incense, we'd get there like 10 minutes late. Sherpa would come down and just look, this sad face, just this heartbroken. He would say, do you mean to tell me that you can't see all those ghosts kneeling in front of you, waiting to be crossed over while you were drinking tea? And you made them wait? They lost their chance. How many are there kneeling in front of you right now? You don't see them? How could you be so cruel? You know, and we're like, sure, I didn't know. And there they were. I can't answer. Sorry. So there were apparently all these ghosts kneeling, waiting to be crossed over by the sound of the bell, by the sound of the wooden fish, by the chanting. You know, one wooden fish talk short, and that's 100 ghosts who didn't get crossed over. You cruel bastard. You know. Open your eyes and you can see it yourself. You don't have to wait for sure. That's what I tell myself. May every living be, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find living unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and truth. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay. Here we are. I wanted to share a song by David Rounds dedicated to the participants in the 2016 Buddha Root Farm Retreat last year. David wasn't able to attend last year, and he was a great fan of Buddha Root Farm, and because he couldn't go, he wanted to have his presence there, so he wrote a song. And we presented it last year at Buddha Root Farm, and people loved it, but forgot it because why? There's major dharma riches. But you come home with just packed full of experiences and insights and texts and stillness. And so this song kind of just, rolls downstream, and it's a great song, and I just wanted to share it again. I'll read it first, and the melody comes from the 14th century. It's a Catalan melody from area around Barcelona. It was an oratorio devoted to the Blessed Virgin, to Mary, Mother Mary, from a book called the Livre Vermeil, the Red Book. So, thank you, David, for this. And it's called She Who Hears the Voices of the World. And it goes like this. She who hears the voices of the world hears my voice. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who hears the cries of beings in prison hears my cries. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who calms the fears of soldiers in battle calms my fears. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who rescues beings from mortal danger rescues me. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who hears the prayers of homeless people hears my prayers. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who grants the wishes of childless couples grants my wish. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who soothes the terrors of the dying, apropos tonight's talk, soothes my fears. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who knows the joy of peace and friendship knows my joy. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who hears when beings call her name hears my name. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. And the last line, she who hears the voices of the world hears my song. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. So this is devoted to Guanyin. We're going to sing it again this year at Buddha Root Farm. And it's a melody from the 14th century. She who hears the voices of the world hears my voice. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who hears the cries of beings in prison hears my cries. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who calms the fears of soldiers in battle calms my fears. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who rescues beings from mortal danger rescues me. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who hears the prayers of homeless people hears my prayers. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who grants the wish of childless couples grants my wish. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who soothes the terrors of the dying soothes my fears. Tamo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who knows the joy of peace and friendship knows my joy. Tamo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who hears when beings call her name, hears my name. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. She who hears the voices of the world, hears my song. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. Well, thank you, David, for that. Okay, something unusual happened today, just an hour before evening chanting took place. The phone rang, and it was a bhikshu, Dharma brother from Hangzhou, who came with a message, and he said, I'm here representing the Buddhist Association of China to invite you to come to China this year in September 15th, because it will be the 10th running of the All China Dharma speaking competition. And we want you to come as the sample of English Dharma speakers, English language Dharma speakers, and give a Dharma talk. And I said, thank you so much for the honor. I will be with 40 people in London on that day. We arrive in London the day before. I said, I'm sorry I won't be able to come. I said, unless you accept pre-recorded Dharma talks. And he said, well, maybe we could have a webcast, a live webcast. So we left it there. But can you imagine speaking Dharma from London online to China in English to compete with all the other English language Dharma speakers in China? So, hallelujah. So, how about that? Who knew that 10 years now they've had a contest? I bet there are some fancy Dharma talks. Imagine? By golly. So, next week, we will be on our way. We'll probably be there. We will have arrived in Reedsport at Buddha Root Farm this time next week. So our sutra lecture will be our Master Jinpo, and Alan, bless his heart, will be, where is he? There he is, right there. No. Alan will be translating. So, is it Wuliang Shou Jing Ba? Okay, the Sutra, Limitless Lifespan. Amitabha Buddha, everybody's favorite Pure Land text. And Alan will be translating, so do come and support that Dharma talk. And Jin Husher will be leaving tomorrow morning, along with a caravan of erstwhile volunteer staff. Who are you pointing to? Alice? Upstairs. Alice is upstairs? Among others? No? No, don't think so. Others will be all going together to prepare. Work week. Going up to get the monastery ready for the rest of us coming a week later. So that's an important part of our annual experience is going up to the wilds of Oregon, no phone, no internet. And anybody look at the weather? Hasn't been raining, right? No? Rain has stopped, so that's important. So going down that hill in the wet is, we don't have enough dryers to dry our clothes if we get rained on. So. All right, so what else do we want to announce for people?
I believe, let's see, the next week after the Saturday night lecture there's going to be a one-day Buddha recitation. That will be, I don't know how the date's, July, the first Sunday in July. We'll probably have the Bayagiri monks coming that Tuesday as well, the first Tuesdays. And we also have, after the Buddha Roof Farm week, if people are interested, a week of Guanyin recitation. We just heard the song about Guanyin Bodhisattva. So if you want to recite her name so she'll hear you, you can go from, I think, July 8th to the 15th or 16th. And so if you're interested in that, we actually have an English class. Doug Powers will be going over Nagarjuna Bodhisattva's explanations on concentration and wisdom. And so that will be from in the evenings. So if people are interested, please sign up at drbux.org. You want to sign up soon because it's almost coming up. So it's drbux.org. So I think that's it. Is there anything else? Jing Fosher, anything? 慈济. Yeah. Anything else? No? I think that's it for our programs. Anything more?
So let's end it with a different voice. This is a voice of a nearly approaching 20-year-old, no, not that old, 15-year-old guitar, Canadian guitar, fabricated à la main, as they say, by Fabrizio Alberico. See you all next week. Or not. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. 南无大方广佛华严经，华严爱会佛菩萨